Hello there, guys. We are here in the barber paddock this week for another episode of Java with James, and we are joined today by the rookie sensation, Linus Lundqvist. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. We've been excited. We've been looking forward to having you on the show. We're going to start right off the top. Have you ever watched what we do here?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a dedicated follower of your show, James.
I don't buy that. I don't
No?
buy it, but I
Okay.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
I appreciate the sentiment. So, I don't like coffee then. So you got to pick your coffee. You went with a cappuccino?
Yeah, that's right. Very classic.
You a big coffee guy? You a regular drinker?
A regular drinker, yes, I love it. I'm not dedicated enough to learn about it. Like,
Okay.
I'm not.
You're not below level.
No, not Pillow level, not Felix level.
Right.
But
Lucas.
no, but I'm just an enjoyer.
You're a casual enjoyer.
Yeah.
Okay, why cappuccino?
For me, it's just like the perfect morning drink. In the afternoon, I go to like a regular Americano, no milk. But
Okay.
in the morning, I like a little bit of foamy action.
All right, you can froth it up a little bit.
Yeah,
Okay,
I don't
it's a
mind
great
that.
way to start the day.
Yeah. What are you drinking then?
So I drink the same as you. So I drink whatever the guest has.
Yeah, okay, so you
So
actually...
I got to try this and judge your coffee choice. So you know when it's rained at a racetrack,
Yeah, I know that feeling.
and then either the next day or later in the day, it's dried out, and you go out on track, and you make a little mistake. You get onto the grass. You can't stop because the grass is still wet.
Yeah.
And then you hit the tire barriers, and they look dry on the outside, but there's all that water, and so you hit them, and all this water shoots up in the air, and it's been sitting in the tire,
Yeah.
rubbery tire for a day. That's what that tastes like to me.
So not good at all.
It's not,
a terrible feeling, because I know that feeling,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
We've all had it.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
That's
This is what I think comes out of those tires.
so one of the worst things you've ever had, basically.
It's up there.
Yeah,
It's up
okay,
there.
perfect, thank you.
Um,
Well, you're welcome.
Yeah, don't take it
Yeah.
personally. Almost all of them have been terrible to me. I just don't have
Do you have a favorite list so far?
So Pillow kind of cheated, right?
Yeah.
Because when we did it the first time, he actually went behind the counter and made it
did
himself.
I know.
And knowing that I'm not a coffee guy, he made me like a latte, which I guess is a lot of milk.
Yes.
And he over milked it to really water it down. And then I
Yeah.
think he put like a squirt of some flavoring in it too.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a cheat.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't his drink.
Yeah, and it was basically like warm milk.
Right. And it still didn't taste great. So, it was the best one, but it was like the best worst one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so first full season in the IndyCar Series. You made a couple banging starts last year, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But you're relatively new to the followers, so let's run through a little bit of the history of Linus. How did you get here? Where did you grow up? How did you get into racing?
Yeah, I grew up in Stockholm, Sweden. I was born and raised, and I started racing in go-karts when I was really young, when I was 5 or 6 years old, and I'm actually the first one in my family to ever be interested.
I was going to ask, was there any relation in the family to anyone in motorsport?
No one. So unfortunately,
what got you?
Well, I always had a passion for winning. And by accident, I got introduced to go-karts when I was young. We were at an amusement park in Finland, visiting my stepdad's parents, and I absolutely loved that. So then when I got back to Sweden, we drove to our local go-kart place in Stockholm, and I got to drive it myself, started to love it, and then, I kind of nagged my parents to buy me a go-kart, and up we went, and then we started racing. But it was to the extent we didn't realize what qualifying was, that there were heats or racing, that you could have a career in this.
Right,
Everything was new. So it was very much learning by doing. So those first couple of years were interesting. And
So how old were you then? When did you start racing?
when I was 6 turning 7.
All right, so you still started on the young side.
Yeah, I think so. And then I did about 8 years of karting, and then we got an opportunity to move to single-seater. And I think what was kind of different was that we never really had the budget to go with a big team at the time, so then we did it ourselves. So we started a family team where my stepdad was my mechanic, his brother was my engineer, and then one of my stepdad's co-workers became a second engineer, and then my mom was an administrator and did everything.
Team principal.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
boss.
Yeah,
He was the boss.
basically.
Yeah.
And yeah, we did that for 2 years quite successfully. Won the championship the second year, and that's still some of the fondest memories that I've ever had in racing, honestly.
There's something nice about that kind of old school, smaller style. Like it's a little more intimate, and especially doing it with your family. I can imagine that was a special time.
Yeah, I mean it has its pros and cons working with family. Everybody that's done this
in
know
any
it.
business.
Yeah, exactly. So you know, when you have success, it's great, but when you have a bad race weekend and you have to go home with these people and you know live at the same house, and my mom, my stepdad, they had full-time jobs and I was still in school, so everything was late nights or long weekends. But yeah, still now looking back at it, it was one of the best years that I've ever had, I think.
So you had no racing in the family, but were you or anyone in your family, were you guys fans of the sport, or did you kind of discover go-karting before you really watched any motorsport?
Yeah, no, we discovered like go-kart. Nobody watched any racing.
Right.
Like we barely knew what Formula One was.
Yeah.
And then
which is weird because there's a lot of racing in Sweden. It's sure there's a lot of rally stuff, whatever. But like that whole part of the world, Sweden, Finland, there's a lot of racing drivers. Denmark, we have like 8 of them here.
I know.
So I'm kind of surprised that you hadn't really touched it in any way. But you're like, oh, go-karting sounds fun.
Yeah, basically. And don't get me wrong, because I love my job. Driving fast cars is cool, but my passion is winning, and I've always had that since I was young. And I did a lot of sports when I was younger, but like go-kart was the only thing that I was like half decent at, and where I was actually winning.
Okay.
So that's
what drew you to it.
Yeah, I want to continue doing this. I don't want to continue playing soccer.
If you've been a great soccer player, it was.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you this, and no judgment here.
Yeah.
Are you a fan of racing?
I've become a fan of racing.
Did it take a while?
It did take a while.
Interesting.
So I wasn't naturally a fan of racing growing up. I was, like I said, I was a fan of the competition and winning.
I love that.
And then, I continued with racing, and then obviously started to appreciate the history and all the different series. So now I would say I'm a big motorsport fan. But I wasn't in the beginning. It took me, probably until I was in my early teens before I was like, okay, this is actually kind of cool. Like, it has a lot of history, and you can look into and start following different series.
So then, at what point did you make the leap over to the U.S.?
So that was in 2020. So I did the 2 years in Scandinavia, and then I did 2 years in the UK, racing Formula 4 and Formula 3, and then 1 year in, I guess, European Formula 3. And then I kind of ran out of options, had nowhere to go in Europe, was kind of planning what to do, and then I got in touch with the team here in the US.
Had that kind of always been on the radar, or was it, I'd run out of options in Europe, where else do they go racing? Okay, there's a good ladder system in the US, let's make some calls.
No, I mean, and obviously the dream was Formula 1,
right?
But you started to see, and this was around the time when Felix and Marcus came over here as well and brought even more attention to the American racing series. I was just like, and obviously I look back at some of the races with Kenny, obviously winning the championship and winning the 500 here. Obviously I knew about it, and it was a bit of a dream to come over here and try to replicate that. But I was still in the kind of the junior series, and then you heard about the ladder system and the incentive you have over here with if you win in a lower series, you get funding to take the next step, which is something we didn't have in Europe. So that was, I'd say, the biggest factor in me coming here.
Right. And so when you came over in 2020 and you ran, were you in Pro 2000 the first time?
No, Formula Regional Americas.
Oh, so okay.
Yeah.
Started in FR.
Exactly.
And how'd that year go?
It went great. It was a chaotic year because it was in the middle of the whole pandemic. So I was firstly blocked to fly into the US because Sweden was a red country at the time. So I flew to Mexico, quarantined for 2 weeks, and then came in, I think, like 9 days before the first race.
The things we do for racing,
yeah. And then, but we had a great year. We won the championship. It was like one of those crazy years where I think we won like 15 out of 17 or 18 races, whatever it was. And then I was able to get the scholarship with Honda to do Indy Lights in 2021. And
that's a big jump from FR to Indy Lights.
It was, and especially because a lot of the tracks were actually new. I've never done any ovals as well, so my first oval was in an Indy Lights car, which is, as you know, a bit of a beast.
Daunting, yeah.
So it was a big learning process, and that first year I learned a lot, and we were still able to be competitive. the first race of the year was actually here, and we were able to get like the pole and the win. I was just like, well, this is going to be an awesome year. And then after that, I got into tracks that I hadn't been to before and ovals and stuff like that, so we struggled a little bit more. But
fine, struggled a little bit more in 21, but then 22 comes along, and it's a pretty dominant year for you.
Yeah, I came back with the same team, HMD Motorsports, and they helped me to kind of get back and fight for the championship. And that year was, one of the best years that I've had, but also one of the worst years that I've had if we talk about sleeping patterns, because I was basically, I didn't usually work that. I didn't realize that I was going to race the next weekend, like the next race. I was almost on a race-to-race deal.
Right.
So I realized that kind of my best way to keep myself in here is to win.
Right.
So I was basically, I need to win every single race almost.
It's good motivation.
Yeah, not good for sleep though. Nor for me or my family, I'll tell you.
Well, I mean, that's why you lost all your hair, is the stress.
Yeah,
right?
basically, yeah. You should have seen me like 3 years ago. I had like full hair down here.
There you go. Went with the low downforce or low drag setup.
Basically, yeah. Desperate times. Desperate times.
So you win the Lights Championship in 2022. Natural progression is then to move up, and you do have the scholarship as part of it.
Yeah.
There are a million different stories as to what happens to Indy Lights champions. Do they take that money and put all the effort into a good program for the 500? Do they take that money and split it up and do maybe 3 or 4 races? Do they take that money, find another sponsor to supplement it, find a full season? There's a lot of different options. You didn't have any of those options.
No.
You did not have anything going when the season started in St. Pete. What was that off-season like, where you've got this prize, you've got essentially this money to spend, you got this check that you have to spend in IndyCar, and seemingly didn't have anywhere to spend it?
Yeah, that's correct, and that was probably one of the worst times that I've ever experienced. Those months from, ending of Laguna. And it was a range of emotion, because at that time we won the championship, which was, the highlight of my career, the biggest thing that I've done, and the happiness that I felt with that. But I already knew, because already by then I've talked to all the teams and realized that I'm in a tough position here.
Options are limited.
Yeah. And then, the winter went on, and you never know in racing, last minute call would come up. Did everything that I could to kind of keep myself in a position for that to happen. And, I don't know, harass these poor team bosses and principals into meeting me and trying to find ways to make something happen. But unfortunately it didn't. So I was stuck on the sideline for, almost all of 2023. And, there were times where I was asking myself, like, all right, what do I do here? Like, it seems like I've kind of met the end of my road. And I don't really have a plan B. So the plan B is like to move back, and because I dropped out of high school, so basically to go back to school, I guess. And that didn't sound very tempting. So I said, all right, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stick around, stay here, stay as ready as I can be, and hopefully we can make something work.
Was the conversation, I know it's such a risky move, but did the conversation ever happen that when it was clear there were no options for IndyCar, it's like, well, I don't want to race nothing. Can I do another year of lights? Or was that just, you can't go backwards, there's nothing to accomplish there, I've already won the title, there's nothing to gain?
And the first and very obvious thing, I didn't have the money to come back. I didn't have any budget. So firstly that, and secondly, I only think that I could have lost by doing that, because then you're expected to win again, and if you don't, then you've lost your momentum.
Your stock goes down. Exactly.
So, there was that, but the biggest thing was just that even if I wanted to, I had no money. So I got stuck on the sideline. But like I said, I'm going to give it my all and try to do something. I looked at maybe doing some sports car stuff, but even that was honestly pretty tough to find your way into.
It's a tough field.
Yeah. It was a rough year until the call from Shank came.
So let's talk about it. Simon Pagenaud gets sidelined. Again, we wish him continued recovery. It's never the reason you want to have an opportunity in a race car, but at the end of the day, someone's got to step into that ride. You're sitting on your couch on a Tuesday and your phone rings with a Columbus number. How does it go?
Yeah. I had his numbers saved.
Right.
You know.
You'd already spoken to him at
Yeah.
some point. He knew who you were.
Yes.
Yeah.
And obviously, I wasn't their first pick, because obviously Lundqvist fell in at Toronto. I think Daly had a couple of runs at both Iowa and the Ohio weekend. So I knew that they were kind of looking around. And when it happened, obviously, I kind of reached out and said that, you know,
Hey, I'm free.
basically.
Yeah.
And then the call came about a week before Nashville and said that, hey, we're thinking about maybe putting you in the car. And I tried to sell myself the best way possible to him.
So what's that sales pitch?
Because he asked me a couple of questions.
Yeah.
I remember this one vividly, because he asked me, you know, what about pit stops? And I said, oh, I've done plenty of pit stops. You know, we've done so many pit stops. And I just did the carpenter test at Sebring. And I said, yeah, we did, you know, plenty of hot stops. We did that. I didn't do a single pit stop. I've never done a live pit stop ever in my life. And
Yes.
it was just, yeah, and he was just, okay, right, good. So you know how to do that. I was just like, 100%, yeah,
absolutely.
not a problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So whatever problem he had, I had like 10 solutions to it.
True or not, irrelevant.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I was just like, just get me in that seat, and you know, I'll show you what I can do. And then he said, all right, let me think about it. And then a couple of days later, I think this was on like a Saturday, so you know, 5 days maybe before the first practice. And then he said, all right, we're gonna go with you. And then yeah, I flew to Columbus, and then the whole weekend started.
So it was Nashville, was the race.
Mm-hmm.
Not an easy track.
No.
Street course, always one of the toughest places to do your first race because there's massive penalties for any mistake. So it's hard for, you know, somebody trying to push the limit. You've been in IndyCar. You've driven the car at least a couple times.
Yeah.
Brilliant qualifying. And I know you were, I remember talking to you afterwards, you probably don't remember this, but I talking to you afterwards, you were so mad after the race, but like, by all accounts, a brilliant race, minus one small little thing, but everything else was very, very good. Were you surprised? Did you exceed your own expectations, or did you go in there being like, I can do this, I'm gonna make a statement here?
Yeah, I wasn't too surprised, but I also wasn't very happy because I felt that I could have done better.
Right. Seeing this competitive thing that you were talking about from a kid. Really
Yeah,
coming out.
yeah, basically. No, but it's you know, I have belief in myself. I know what I can do, and like it was a good weekend. We were fast, but like I said, I wasn't perfect, and I think you kind of have to be that way in any sport or business where it's like, well, you kind of have to expect, you know, perfection from yourself, or at least strive for it. But I will say that after, when we spoke, obviously I was very upset, very unhappy. But when the dust settled and, you know, you took a step back and kind of looked at the whole weekend itself, I'm like, I'm damn proud of what we did that weekend, because it was a very last minute thing around Nashville. And then, you know, small things like FP2 got rained out, and then warm-up got canceled, which is where you do the pit stops, as you know.
Full fuel running for the first time.
Yeah, but so going into the race, I'd never done a hot stop ever in my life. And then I was very nervous, but I couldn't really tell the team because I told them that I've done it.
I love it.
But yeah, I remember like the night before, I had like basically 2 pages of notes that I've written down of like things I need to do for the pit stop. But it went fine, it went smoothly. But yeah, so there were like many small things during that weekend where I was just like, what am I gotten myself into?
So the weekend goes well. You exceeded most people's expectations, maybe not your own, but outside your mind, it was very, very successful. How many phone calls from team owners did you get on Sunday night or Monday morning saying, hey, what are you doing next year?
Yeah, a lot more than I've had leading up to that race, I'll tell you.
The tables turn a little bit, eh?
Yeah, that's exactly how I would put it. You know, over the past couple of years in the paddock, I've been the one, you know, calling them, texting them, trying to meet them at convenient locations. And all of a sudden, they were calling me. Which I couldn't believe because I was driving back with a friend of mine, James Rowe, and I was very upset after the race. I was just, because I thought at the time, like this was my one moment and I blew it. Like I blew it. And then firstly, you know, Jim and Mike sat me down after the race and said, hey, we want you to do Indy as well. I said, okay, that's awesome. I would love to do that. And then after that, obviously, the phone started to ring on my way home from Nashville. And James was sitting there driving, and he was just like, who's calling you again? I was just like, I need to take this.
You're like, Chip. He's relentless, this guy. Just give me a second.
Yeah, basically. But yeah, that was very surrealistic as well, just that moment. And it showed how one race weekend basically changed everything.
Change your life, man.
Yeah.
So so obviously the deal gets done with Ganassi. You're a full-time rookie now, and you're in this powerhouse team. You have 4 teammates this year, but you know, 2 in particular that are pretty well established in the series. How fortunate do you feel to be not just at such a successful team, such an accomplished team, but to be able to pull information, knowledge, data, all those things off 2 of the best in the business?
I mean, last weekend was a perfect example of why it's such a privilege to be part of this team when, especially as a rookie coming up, you have, like I said, especially maybe Alex and Scott to look at, but like what Dixon did last weekend at Long Beach. It's like everybody in the paddock, myself included, was wondering how the hell did he do that? And you're one of very few people that are able to go back, look at his video and data and said that, oh, this is how he did it. Right. Doesn't mean that I understand how he did it.
Doesn't mean I can go do it, but yeah, I know how he did it. Yeah.
But I can see how. And as a rookie, there's no better place to do it at. So, and obviously you have a car that's, you know, able to win races and win championships, and that's, I think, what all us drivers want to do.
Absolutely right. You're a competitive guy, you're in a competitive series, but a competitive team, and we thank you for sitting down with us. We wish you all the best, man. It's been great chatting to you.
Thanks, James.
Cheers.
I'm sorry about the cappuccino.
No, I'm not drinking anymore. I just wanted, the cheersing was just like a polite.
Yeah, perfect.